Hello, everyone. My name is Vicky, and I'm the pastor's wife. But it's nice to have you all here. Today, first of all, we've been doing this. We started the moms group with a 6-week series that's available online, and it's just a sweet, sweet time that we had together, gathering, going over some kind of just good mom principles to help encourage and strengthen moms. And then after that, we saw that there was a need to continue. But then we were praying about it, saying, well, we can't do this every week. So we meet twice a month, and now it's just kind of on different topics. And I think last time Nikki shared on meal planning, and that was wonderful. Thank you, Nikki. I watched it. I wasn't here, but I watched it, and it encouraged me. When I got home from our trip, I made chili. And so we had chili and cornbread one night, and 2 nights later, we had chili cheese dogs. So your teaching worked for at least me. But today we have Karen Eubank here, and I just want to introduce her and just share really quickly. I met Karen and Dave on the phone when we were living in Myanmar. And I believe it was during the coup, and they had called us and prayed with us, and it was just really encouraging because obviously if you're in the middle of a coup, it helps to have people on the other line praying with you. But when we moved here, it was almost 6 months into the coup, and we have 4 children, and we had just gotten here, and it was around 4th of July. So I don't know if some of you know what happens on 4th of July, but for America, we do fireworks. Well, we just came from a war zone, so we didn't think about that. We were thinking, yay, fun, 4th of July, celebrate. But then all of a sudden the fireworks started happening. My whole family, like something happened in our brains. Like, I know they look pretty, but this doesn't feel right. And so it was a little difficult on my family. And we went home that night early. And when we came back the next day to visit with the Eubanks, I was talking to her about it. And this was kind of the first time that we really got to talk. Besides, hi, nice to see you, you know. And I was a little shaken by the experience with my kids, how it affected them. And, you know, as a mom, you start thinking like, oh no, what did I do? What can I do right? What did I do wrong? All these things. You start doubting and questioning all these things. I've never been one for labeling my kids. So for me, I don't like to say the word MK for my kids. Like, you're an MK, you're a PK, you're a TCK, and like all these things. Okay, if you don't know what those terms are, missionary kid, pastor's kid, third culture kid, okay? And or any other lettering that you want to throw out there, okay? ADHD, okay? All these things, okay? Like, I don't like that, but in that moment, I'm like, oh my goodness, my kids, some of them are going to go to the States, and they're going to have this labeling on them, and thank you, PTSD, you know, like all these things. And I was going through this like kind of moment of like craziness in my mind of self-doubt and everything. And Karen, I think we were like outside the bathroom, and she like she had met me just in God's perfect timing, and she just, I don't know if you remember, but like you kind of like grabbed me and you said, I need to tell you to not label your kids. Do not blame it on this, that. I know she said some really great things, and it impacted me, okay? I can't tell you everything that she said, but the point is that she reminded me that we're in God's will. And when we're in God's will, it's good. And he has a plan, and to trust his plan and not stick a label on it and not to justify or create some other thing, but trust his will. So that was really, really impactful to me after moving here, because it helped my mindset to change and to not be in chaos and worry, but to trust in where God had us and what he had us through. And so I hope today she can be encouragement to all of you guys, because I know she was a huge encouragement to me. So thank you, Karen. And here's Karen.
Yikes. Do we need to turn this on? I guess it is on. Hi, it's on. So, thank you for having this morning. This is such a sweet time. I don't often get out for sweet times with ladies. We live far out of town, and I just find myself busy, so it's a joy to meet you all. I hope we do get to talk to each other one-on-one. There was a video that I wanted to show, just a really quick synopsis of our ministry, and I think they wanted to do that first. Is that right, Aaron? So this is a documentary trailer. So just 2 minutes out of a documentary that was made about our ministry that helps me, because it's hard for me to put it in a nutshell, and a picture says 1,000 words. So is this, and then I was going to put it in the middle of what I had to say, but we'll do it at the beginning, and then we'll kind of go through it like that. So let's do that. Okay. Well, can I pray? All right, Lord Jesus, thank you for this wonderful time and this wonderful fellowship and these ladies, and that you would speak to our hearts this morning with your words and your presence. In Jesus' name, amen. So, thank you, Vicki, again for having this time, and thank you for everybody who's joining online, that this would be a blessing to you and wherever you are, friends and family. If you can just take that video and put it in your pocket for a minute, and I'll get to it in a few minutes. When we talk about parenting, it's the shared experience among us. Even if we don't have kids of our own, even if we have nieces, nephews, we always have kids, and so we're always trying to raise them. So it's a very shared thing. At the same time, it's very unique, very personality-driven as how each of us are going to do it. And I almost feel like this is sort of a standing up and giving your individual report in school. Like, how did that parenting experience go for you, Karen? And we could each give a bit of a report on how is this going for you? It's even though we have benchmarks, all these common benchmarks in parenting, they again could have a book written about each of them. They're very unique to how we've experienced it. I mean, you talk about conception. For some of us is very difficult, some way too easy. You talk about pregnancy, and that's really difficult for some people. It's very easy for some, and most of us are somewhere in the middle of that range, and maybe most of the books have been written about that stage. And then labor and delivery, if you've been through labor and delivery, it probably was one of the hardest but most rewarding things you've ever done or will ever have to do, and I can say this for myself as well. And then we feel comfortable with different phases or different stages of things. Some people say, I was really good with the infant stage, or I was really good with the toddler stage, or the school age, or the teenage years. And some of us feel like we're better at maintaining routines, or we're better at discipline, or better at schooling, or recreation for our kids, or our grandkids, or nieces, or nephews. But really, it is very unique. We put our own recipe into that with our husband, with those around us. Just like when we get married, we're blending two unique people, and they are like a recipe for a family pot. And then when you have kids, you bring that same recipe, those ingredients that you two have in common into your pot, but then you also add other things like your family, your friends, church community, civic kind of community, even digital relationships help raise our kids. We have lots of things that we're bringing. When we're really tested, we often go kind of a rewind to our personal experience. Like, I was a kid once. How did that go for me? How did I manage this difficulty, this challenge, this accomplishment, this boredom, this fear? So you pull from different things, but for us here in this room, we've sort of taken that ingredient, those unique things, and then we put them on an airplane and send them into a different culture. And that's a whole nother mix of how are we going to raise our kids. And quickly, you feel pretty overwhelmed. Like, how are we ever going to do this? The weight of reality. I remember when they put my daughter in my arms, I was like, what have I done? This is mine for the rest of my life. And you realize it's not a one-person job or two-person job or 3 or 4 or 5-person job. Boy, it takes a lot of help. And so how are we going to raise international kids? And the answer is together. Together with God, together with each other. Now, I myself am pretty independent when it comes to wanting to do things. I'll do it myself. But having kids made me accept help, ask for help, and hopefully be helpful to other people. And it made me very, very dependent. And it's almost a circle. First on God, then on my husband, and then on my parents and my in-laws who live here in Chiang Mai, and then on our team. We have a wonderful group of people who help us, and our mission work, which then tied it back to God. And so it was this circle of dependence that started with God and ended with God all the way around, with all these things that I probably didn't appreciate as much until I had my kids and needed that reminder that I am dependent on people to do things all together. So what I was trying to introduce is that I am just one of many stories. All of us have different stories of being with small children that are very significant to us, having our own kids, and having a different journey, and again, that unique recipe that brought us from all different places somehow to connect this morning in this room. So to get to know each other a little bit, I just had a couple questions. One is, this is how many are from, raise your hand if you're from Thailand. All right. Raise your hand if this is the second country you've lived in, aside from your, okay. Raise your hand if you've lived in 3 different countries. Okay, I'm be looking around so you can see people, 3 countries. Raise your hand if you've lived in 4 different countries before. Amy, I did not know that. Anyone with 5 countries? Wow. Okay, so we've been moving around, maybe with or without our kids. The light is funny. So raise your hand if you knew by the age of about 16 that you wanted to live as an expat. Expat is another word for living internationally. So raise your hand if by 16 years old you knew you were going to leave your home country. All right, a few. Okay. And raise your hand if you decided after marriage that you're going to leave your home country. If it was a later decision. All right. Another section. Raise your hand if the children in your life live someplace else. Maybe they've grown, or you have nieces or nephews, but your kids are in a different country. Okay, it takes a lot of coordination with time zones. How about if the adult children in your life have chosen to live in someplace other than their passport country? How many kids are also following the expat? And then the last one, how many of your adult expat kids have chosen to come back here? Yeah, all right. Yeah. Debbie is a really old friend because we've known each other. She's been here before I was, and is part of the Morse family that is heroes to us. But that gives you a little picture that we are all from different places doing different things, and probably online you can also relate to all these different paths that have brought us to different things. So I'm humbled to be up here as a speaker. I'm not a public speaker. I'm not a Bible teacher. At the same time, I appreciate having learned from other people's experiences. You just realize you're not alone. People have told me things that made me feel like they can understand, they can relate to what I'm going through. Or they've told me things that made me thankful I didn't have to experience that. I was like, phew, I'm glad that's not my life. Thank you. So in two ways, sharing our own stories that hopefully you'll get a chance to do with each other is significant. Even if you don't feel like the wise person, which I don't, sharing the experience is going to make a difference in the way that we have new ideas and things. So I was born in America, and I was raised in a close family, mother, father, one brother, is a little bit younger, in the church, grown up in the church. And I made a decision to accept Jesus in my heart as a small child, and then again in high school, and it's been ups and downs, but totally dependent on Jesus in my life for everything. I studied special education. I wanted to be a teacher in America for children with learning disabilities, and I only taught 1 year in a public school. I really liked the public school opportunity to get in and get involved in the community, but I only taught 1 year before I met Dave Eubank. And he had, as he said, been raised here in Thailand. His parents are still here. And he went to the Army and was an officer in Rangers and Special Forces. And after 10 years of that, he changed direction and wanted to go to seminary and do mission work. And we were married during his time in seminary. So in the 3 years he was there, I was there for the 2 of those. I did some teaching and tutoring, and then we came because we were called by an ethnic group in Burma called the Wa, and they had recently opened. They had been very closed, and they opened, and they said they would love some missionary to come to help with sharing the gospel, Jesus love, as well as some development. And so we did that for 3 short trips while he was still in seminary. And when he finished seminary and we were ready to move over here to Thailand, that door closed. And he looked around, and because of his parents' relationships, he was invited to go into some villages in Burma. But at the same time, there was an uprising in the 90s, and so there was a lot of displacement in Burma inside the country, as well as refugees coming across the border. And again, because his parents had relationships with churches and pastors, they said, Dave, can you come encourage my village? But you have to walk all day, all night, up and down mountains, through Burma Army lines at night, but nobody wants to come. And he said, that's for me. That is my mission. I love God. I'm not a pastor type, but I love that mission. Young men and women joined along, as you saw in the video, because they also wanted to help their people, and they wanted to know, how can we respond to all this displacement that's going on? And so we started a leadership and relief team training where young men and women learn how to help their own displaced communities, with navigation, with reporting, video and camera, with security, demining things, and radio conversations, and understanding and a paramedic kind of response when there's an attack. Who can get there at the very site of the injury and evacuate somebody when is bombs and guns and everything going off? So that's the easiest way to explain it, in addition to having shown you the video. So again, for me, I had planned to be a special ed teacher in America forever. And yet, I thought it is better to do life with someone that you see the long term the same way. God is sovereign. We pray about everything. Anything can happen to your career. I decided I'm not going to base my life on marrying someone who has the same career path. But this man is an amazing man of God. I was so captivated by his faith and his strength of heart, his commitment to Jesus. I said, where are you going again? I'd never planned to do mission work, and I had been raised in the church, but our church wasn't a big mission church. But anyway, I thought, there's children all over the world. I'll figure something out when we get there. So, brings us here to Burma and Thailand, and I got to follow my notes, or else I'll just ramble. That mission has gone from Burma to the Middle East, to even Sudan, and just a very short chaplain program in Ukraine. And my part of the program, or my part of our ministry in that sense, is a kids program. So we call it Good Life Club program. And this was born about the same time my first daughter was. I was on a trip with our team, and we were in a village that was very threatened. People were very afraid, and the kids would not play. They hid, and they would watch me from behind a tree or behind a house or something like that. So I thought, well, if I do something animated, if I put on a show, maybe I can teach them something they can watch. So I had an idea of what can I teach kids by putting on some kind of a play or a show. At the same time, I looked at this kind of desperate group of kids, and I just wanted to take them all home. How can I fix your situation? I've got to do something about this. And I felt God say, you can't, but I can. Introduce them to me, and I will give them abundant life. And that's from John 10:10 in the Bible. And this is one of my takeaway points this morning is, please know that God will give you something that you can hang on to for your whole life. It's been my marching orders. Introduce people to Jesus. He will give them abundant life. I don't know how it works. I couldn't imagine how God was going to make their life abundant in that moment, but that's not our job. We just introduce people to Jesus, and he will do that. And so through our kids program, we do the gospel bracelets. Every story and everything we do should go back to those 5 colors. Gold is the promise of heaven. It is the reality that God made a good day. It's not an accident. That sin and evil is in the world. It comes outside us and attacks us, but it's definitely inside our hearts. Kids are fighting each other and disobeying, in a war zone as much in prosperity. White is peace, forgiveness, that is a result of giving Jesus that sin and fear. And green, I skipped love. Love is after the evil. So Jesus' love is the red bead, and that is the only love that can overcome evil and sin in this world. And then white, peace and forgiveness, and green is hope and new life. And so in my kids' programs, we just sort of repeat this in various ways, with the bracelet, with the dance we do, almost everything. And so, again, Jesus will give you something that you can hang on to that will be substantial for the ministry he wants you to do. So that's I have 3 kids. The oldest, Saheli, is 24 this year in August. She is studying nursing in her last year of nursing school. My second daughter is 22. 22. She finished with animal science. She wants to be a veterinarian. She has to go to vet school. And then my son is 18, and he wants to be in the Army as well, and they all are going to the same university in America, Texas A&M. It's part of my husband's history, but I'm really thankful for it. It's been an amazing gift, and there's so many little anecdotes and stories I could tell you, but this is why I have the notes, so I don't ramble. But God has been faithful in so many ways and providing so many things that I could never have orchestrated on my own. And He's given the kids a path. And this church is significant because my son loves it. He comes here by himself every Sunday, and he has a community and friends. And I'm just indebted to God all the time, which is obvious, but I feel it all the time. So raising kids in another culture. Oh, yeah, the last thing is I'm a summer school teacher also here in Chiang Mai for about a couple months at Ambassador Bilingual sometimes and some other schools around. So God has opened up lots of different opportunities. So anyway, I was praying, Lord, what am I going to share? It just, again, feels like a random collage of great experiences with life. Help me. And I felt God say, yes, tell them how I have helped you. Okay, so again, this goes now to another sort of talking point. When we ask God for help, it has been my experience that I rarely remember to write down the answer. And so, do you keep prayer journals? For everything you ask God for help, do you try to write the answer? Do you remember to write the answer? As I was thinking about this talk the last month, I felt God saying, just check your notes, Karen. Have you been taking notes on the things I've been doing in your life? If you take notes, and that's exactly what Deuteronomy is about. Deuteronomy is all about remember, 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 because you will forget. And so that's my encouragement to you. For every time you ask God for something, leave a space to write how He answered that prayer. Can you even think now, if we pause for a minute, can you think of the last 3 requests you made to God? And has He answered? How did He answer? I'm going to stop for a minute. We can think. And if we can remember one of those, you can tell the person next to you. Just one of those, to at least testify that, yes, Lord, I do remember things you've done in my life. All righty, I'm going to get going again. I identified about 4 things that were highlights, or I should say, topic sentences, as far as raising kids overseas. Things that I feel God really helped me with before I even knew. And of course, the first one is meeting Dave. And you can't have kids without your spouse. You can, but anyway, that's the first thing I was thankful for as far as how God has helped me. What He brought into our relationship that has carried on has been this honesty before God. And so most specifically, when you have an argument or when you have a conflict, it's honestly and trusting that the other person is doing this, putting everything on the table. What are all my motivations for wanting this thing or not wanting this thing or wanting to do this or that? What are they all? And if you can both do that together and then ask God to give you the answer together. And we'll always say there's always kind of a winner and a loser. There's always somebody who feels like they're compromising more or less. But it basically balances out like an investment for the long run. You basically see this shared journey together if you can be in that honest place. And so it reminds me, as far as parenting goes, my marriage is the top of my to-do list. Under God, it does not survive on autopilot. I always feel like I'm checking in. How is it going? How are we doing? Is there this vitality going on between us? There's this quote that says, the best thing parents can give to their children is to love each other. And so good parenting really does come, or has in my life come from the amount of time that I've put into my marriage, that I trust in all of our crazy adventures or work that he's not trying to kill the kids, that we're doing this together, that he is giving his best to the kids. And he has to do the same for me too, because in that unique recipe that we each come into our lives with, God's blended it, and he's intended that blending to be the result for the kids. He had a plan that this is going to benefit, not hurt the kids. And so as moms, it is very easy to get protective of I know what's best. And yet it's a challenge and a worthy one to say we're doing this together all the way. And it really has to be that kind of a priority. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 is a wonderful passage. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him and he will direct your paths. Because again, it's giving Jesus your whole heart, and you're giving your heart to your husband as well. I don't see any husbands here, so Aaron, your wife as well. And there's many things we don't understand. So all the things we don't understand, daily, hourly, that God will be faithful in that. We were married 7 years before we had kids. And I really love that we had that time, because I did not feel old enough to have kids. I thought I just got married. How am I supposed to do this? How am I supposed to bring a child into this? And so let me grow up a little bit. And so after a while, then it took 2 years to have kids. But at this point, as the kids are grown, I'm really thankful. I think we did a lot together, and we can go back to that place to know each other. But it does take work. It cannot run on autopilot. The significant things in your life, again, bring together to form the ingredients in your family pot, your personality, your interests, your husband's personality and interests, and they all come together. And I think our family I sort of identified 4 things that probably are highlights. Faith. Dave and I have, the core of our heart is our faith in Jesus. And so we hope that pours into our kids, and we are very thankful that it has to this point. We both love freedom. I was raised with a lot of freedom. My parents gave me a lot of opportunities to go and do things. Dave's heart is spiritual freedom. He grew up in Thailand, and he knows spiritual warfare is such a big part of life, that you have to be free in your spirit before you can choose well for anything. And then political freedom from oppression. I wanted to be in special ed because I wanted to help kids break that bondage of frustration. You can't read, you can't do math. And then now in the kids program, that kids would be free from fear. They would have joy in Jesus, that you can have joy even in a war zone. The other 2 ingredients we bring into our family pot, I would say activity and adventure. So activity, we're just active. Dave and I are just active people. And our fitness is for our own enjoyment. We want to be able to do things, but it's opportunities too. I found out when I started doing mission work with Dave, and he wanted to go to very remote places, again, where you have to carry everything in your backpack, that our team, lovely Corinne families, or our leaders would say, well, that village is not a good one for you. We have another village that's better for you, meaning you're not fit. You can't get there. So I realized if I want to be able to help everybody, I need to be able to go places and be physically fit. It's in my best interest to do that. I think also from a women's perspective, that we expect our husbands to be faithful and responsive to us, and so we do our part too. We need to do our best to take care of ourselves. If we're asking them to be faithful, that we would also be our best self, physically and spiritually and emotionally in that way. Adventure is something that I think Dave and I just had in common. Now, I don't have it near to the extent that he does, but we definitely connected on that level. And so that is part of our family recipe. He loves mountain climbing, high altitude mountain climbing. And the kids participate in rodeo, which are adventurous sports with horses, and the girls play polo on horses, and most of us skydive now. So it's crazy, but we thank God, and I hope we can get to heaven saying we use the whole world from the bottom to the top. and just enjoyed everything you gave us in this life. And so again, that's just our family recipe pot, and it kind of has worked itself out, not just on mission, but it's recreation as well. And I'm thankful God is using that. And I've told the kids, you don't have to do any of this when you get older. And God will tell you what is in your own heart. You take from it and you use as he has for you. But this is the best your mom and dad can think of giving you as you launch off into adulthood. So that's the first, how has God helped me? He gave me an amazing husband, which I'm very thankful. And closely related is mission. We have this amazing mission that I never imagined in my whole life I would be doing anything. It's in a war zone. It's with a lot of military people and situations. And I remember being 7 years old, thinking, I am so thankful I'm born a girl and I'll never be drafted and I never have to go to the army. So who knew? But anyway. I'm not Miss Cross-Cultural, really. I like having deeper conversations, and so the language challenges have really been difficult for me. And I really do enjoy studying languages. They're fun, but I'm just not a talker, really. So it wasn't until recently I realized, Karen, you're going to have to own up to this. You're never going to learn the languages if you don't like to talk to people. But I do enjoy it. I just never was very good at it. And I would go to a village, and I would look at the kids, and they would look at me, and I would look at them, and they would look at me. It would just get awkward and uncomfortable, and the devil, he would just attack me, saying, you can't even do what you think you're good at. You can't even play with these kids properly. So, what am I going to do? God did speak to me. He says, you just be loving. You just be loving in whatever way that means to the people there. That's your job title, or that's your, duty. And I know when you are extending yourself for others and when you're not. And into that also, we're kids. All of a sudden, I had kids, and we didn't have to talk. They had kids too, and we had so much to say as soon as God gave me the kids. And I felt like he was saying, this is part of your ministry, and it's so easy now for you to just revolve around each other. And I know what to do with kids. And so it was a real gift in a way that I never predicted. When I thought about all the village kids out there, I felt God say, well, whatever you bring for your own kids, just bring a few more, a little bit more. For years and years, we just opened little plastic packages of plastic animals for Christmas because they were easy to play with, they were indestructible, and they were easy to give away, and they were easy to live. And so I had to sort of check myself. Don't buy fancy, high-tech things. Buy things that are good for everybody, and just have that bigger picture. But when I go to a village, we'd sit in a Korean house with a tablecloth, those plastic tablecloths on the floor, and I would just open up plastic soldiers and plastic animals, and I laminated mazes and dot-to-dots, and we would just, so whatever I thought my kids would like to play with, we just did more. And so I just thank God for giving me that's a picture. And same with our kids program, just whatever you, actually, to be perfectly honest, my kids never participated in my kids program until they got older because they ran off with all that freedom. But as they got older, my daughter sings guitar, the other one is participating, and my son, and they have their horses. And so again, our family recipe of bringing the animals and bringing joy, and it all is come to a place where it builds on itself. And so God didn't have a plan to separate our family and mission. It really grew together. And, in that way, and I was going to say this later, but it's the uncles and aunties in that ministry who have raised my kids in ways that I never would have been able to do it. I felt like I myself was a preschooler learning things about hospitality and generosity and simplicity and compassion. Out in the villages, they just welcome you with amazing things that I was learning at a very, very small level, and I thought if I could just let my kids experience this, they will come out so much stronger of character. And yet, it was a challenge because I wasn't always comfortable. And yet I felt God say, just stay the course, Karen. Hang in there. And so that's the mission. As God's giving me a mission to help raise kids, He will do the same for you in whatever He has called you to. A division of labor. Dave had the vision of Free Burma Rangers, of getting these young men and women to be leaders and to do relief missions. And that really wasn't, I did the kids program, but it wasn't my vision per se, and I couldn't keep up. And I didn't, all of a sudden, when the kids came, it made a lot of sense. I will take care of the kids. I get them ready for mission. We go on mission together. And it really kept me busy just keeping the kids in one area. Homeschooling came along. So all of a sudden, Dave and I are doing life and raising kids and ministry together, but we do have separate lanes. And it was a gift in that way too, where we could be walking along the same path, but having our own space and duties in that place to do it. So again, it's God's working things out where you can put your pieces together, and yet in the big picture, it makes a good puzzle. And again, so many of our team came along and helping me do this, helping me do that, help the kids this, help the kids that, from the mission, from Burma all the way to Chiang Mai to America. Together. It's a big together experience. You probably know that better than I do. So, thankful for marriage, for my husband, thankful for our mission. I'm thankful for prayer as being a huge asset. And we say that, if you have a faith in Jesus, you know you need to pray, but wow, prayer did amazing things I never expected. There were several times that we had sicknesses, and we never seemed to get just colds or flus. We got malaria and typhoid and typhus, and just these undiagnosed fevers that are deadly, and they really were deadly in certain ways. And there's miracles about how we were helped in those places. And yet one measurable thing I noticed, I started pulling out my Bible, again with these undiagnosed fevers, and I would start reading through the Psalms, and I would pick out and highlight the verses on healing, the verses on God's help, and for an hour I would just pray through those. And I will tell you that we stopped getting those serious fevers and illnesses in that way. It was remarkable, and it was wonderful, and I remembered I will always tell people, put your Bible in your medical kit. You don't know how God is doing healing in each of our lives, but it really does make a difference. There's pray without ceasing, is in Thessalonians, and so often when we are tortured by worry, you do pray, but really, how are we praying? I had this vision once of handing Jesus this knotted ball of yarn, that's all twisted, needs to be unraveled, and him looking at me going, what am I supposed to do with this? Could you just pray? Shoot an arrow of prayer. I don't want worry. I want prayer. And so to do that, to really train your mind, to refocus on, and then what to pray. I've prayed through many friends, several, I'd say many, who have passed away already. And that is just awful when you don't have any control of a situation and you can't enact a change no matter how hard you pray, and it's going a certain direction. You just feel like giving up, like this is just not working. But God says, you don't know what I'm doing, you don't know my will, use my words. So again, the Psalms have been just invaluable to me that say, I don't know how this works for you, but I will pray God's words back to him. I will pray those promises back to him, and he will be doing more than any of us know how to do. I kind of envision myself in the gap. I'm not sure what a gap is. I envision like a little ditch, but maybe, I don't know, everybody has their picture of praying in the gap with my little sword, like poking away at things that could be hurting, the person who I'm praying for in whatever way that is. And so praying those psalms and not worrying, trying to capture those fears. There's a prayer book that I use, and I'm happy to share it. It's by a lady named Sylvia Gunter, and I've never met her. I've never been to any of her conferences, but it's called Prayers for Your Family. And one thing I love about it is that it has prayer. It has full of prayers, and it's full of prayers based on Scripture. I mean, she's got references right there. Prayers for your husband, and it's long. But the more I prayed that, it was like it took a weight off of me where I don't have to change this. I don't have to expect this in Dave. I don't have to worry about this. This is a spiritual wish list of, oh, couldn't we all be like this? Couldn't our eyes and our ears and our hands and our feet do these amazing things? Well, why not? Pray that. And as I did, I felt freer that I was helping him and I was helping us. And then there's prayers for your wife. Well, I just pray that for myself. Like, why not? Because I'm the wife. So I just changed the pronoun from she to you, or me, And now I've gone on to, I just put all the girls there. Now I pray for Dave and Peter in the husband part, the stuff that applies. And then the girls and I in the wife part. And so we're all taken care of. But it really is like this. So I just feel, I just say, those prayers every morning, it really does change the equation. And usually the equation is me. Usually the equation is I'm bound and determined to do something about that which I'm concerned about. And I feel like those prayers kind of disarm that. Like maybe you're not going to do that thing that you thought was so important or say that thing that you thought was so important. And maybe you should just relax a little bit and let God do his thing. And it really does make a difference. So Sylvia Gunter's not the only one, but employing those prayers for your husband and your kids, that's the other thing. There's a section on kids, and I've started doing that too, because again, as their kids get older, they go places by themselves, and they do things you don't know about, and you want them to be independent until they are. And you're like, wait a second. So putting that in God's hands, and one of my friends said the hardest thing and most important thing she does every morning is to give her kids to Jesus again every day. As they walk out the door, they go to public school, but you're in Jesus' hands again. You're in Jesus' hands again. And it really does release you from that innate, I will control or I am responsible for, Most recently, Psalm 23 has really been helpful because I just put, again, my kids' names in. The Lord is Peter's shepherd. He shall not want. The Lord breaks Saheli walk through the valley of shadow, but and so you just give that momentum and you give all of that action and all of that concern and all of that comfort at the end. You put your kids right in that place by putting their names in that psalm specifically. So the last thing I would have identified as, raising kids in another culture that feel like God has really helped me with, and I would go back to freedom. And in this situation is freedom from fear. In one of the videos that I'm saying, I think my vocation is called fear management. And I sort of said that off the cuff at one of the interviews, and I realized, wow, that's a true thing, though, because I think we all are trying to manage fear of one kind or another. And first you get pregnant, and you're afraid that the pregnancy is going to make it, and then the baby's born, and you're afraid of this, and then it just goes on forever. You can spend the whole time being afraid. It's very easy. And so 2 Timothy 1:7 is a verse that just should always be memorized, that God did not give us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and self-control. And that's his power beyond our own, and his love. And Dave reminds us, whenever we're afraid on our mission and don't know what to do, you're kind of paralyzed by a situation, ask Jesus for love. And when you have love, then it makes sense. Oh, I can do this small thing. It's like it opens your eyes to a new way to act. Very small things that really are eternal. And so, and self-control, again, how do I control a physical response? Because when we're afraid, we just respond in ways we're not in control of. And God wants us to be working well for him. And so one example that I feel like God spoke to me is when we were in a village with our kids, a Korean village, a wonderful place that we'd been many different times. And this year, there were more explosions than normal. Off in the distance, I didn't know how close. We were told that it could come close, and maybe once a day for a few days. And I always worried, if I go to the shower, will there be an emergency, or go over here? You just want to keep kids close to you, but can't control the situation. So we've all been in those places. We can't control the situation, but we feel like it was right to be there. So you're in that conflict. And I remember laying down, imagining, Lord, if I could just bubble wrap them, then nothing would hurt them, nothing would impact them, just totally protect them and cover them. And I felt Jesus say, well, you could, and you'd cover them from me. You'd insulate them from me as well. Don't you want them to call out to me? Don't I have a chance to speak in this situation too? When is the time that they're going to ask me for help? Do you really want to be the source of all their solutions? Wasn't the answer I wanted. Like, I'm going to remove the threat and the fear and the danger. But it was real. Where God says, your job is to be the example. This is not the first or the last time you're going to be out of control, or they're going to be out of control. Teach them how to ask me for help. So I've also, in a less acute, but maybe more chronic times of desperation, we homeschooled. And so there were so many times coming from a public school background and wanting to be a public school teacher, I was ready to jump out, like, this is not working. I had one friend in the very beginning who spoke good words to me. She said, if you can get your kids to work for you, then you can help them the rest of their life. But we all know, that is a good task. So I imagined the old American prairie, and we have lots of fields of just grass, yellow grass waving, a whole expanse. But then right in the middle of it are these little tracks, 2 little tracks, which we say are covered wagons way back in the old days. And all you see are these 2 tracks. And I felt God say, stay in the track, Karen, stay in the track. We're going to do this. Just my blessings are going to come in this track I have for you. Even though it's easy to jump ship and go back to what's familiar, don't do it. So I think, again, as God has given you a picture of where you're going, to be faithful to that, and he will be faithful to you as well. God does not abandon us. In John 14, I can't remember. He says, I will not leave you as an orphan. I will come to you. So whatever he gives us to do, he'll be faithful to give us what we need. And usually that's in the form of other friends as well. And just constant help. There are so many times I took all of our school books into the bedroom and laid them down and kind of smacked them on the floor. Dave, look at all the stuff we have to get through. This is not working, like the biannual meltdown. Ah! And he'd say, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And I'd always say, Dave he doesn't necessarily know everything about me, but he knows where I want to be. He knows who I want to be, and we want to be this together. And so I just thank God that we were able to continue and daily step through. On a last trip into Burma, a month ago, I was feeling overwhelmed, and I remember God saying, well, what is overwhelming? Like, all you have to do today is get to this one place and sleep there tonight. Is that so hard? No, that's just today. Well, then there's this and this and this. Well, all you have is today, actually. All you have to do is today. You're only exhausted because you're imagining the future. So if you can stop imagining the future and just do today, then we're all good, right? A good friend of mine, Norma Morse. She once gave a women's retreat talk, and she said, the future is not reality. Today is reality. The past has happened, but the future is not real. It hasn't happened yet. So in partly we have to plan, but partly it's like just slow down and just do today, and then I'll give you tomorrow after that. One thing that helped me when our first daughter, Haley, was very, very sick, and really we got to the point where we didn't know which way it was going to go. And we'd been at our camp in Burma, and have a medical school, have a trained medics there, and we had communication with doctors out here. And we really wanted to honor our team, and I felt God saying, can they hear my voice too? Can you trust our team to hear from me as well, or is it only you that hears from me as the mom? Well, no, everybody can pray. Well, then you need to wait on our whole team to decide what is the medicine she should be taking? What is the treatment she should have? When should you evacuate if you have to evacuate? And so it really is this a testimony of God is working through the whole team. He doesn't just speak to the mom. He doesn't just speak to one person. And so I did use that Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, where I waited on so many things I didn't understand about medicine and treating our daughter, and let our team help. And it was a really difficult time. And I remember asking myself, and maybe you've been in this situation, how did I get to this place? Like, how have I come to this awful place where I really don't know what the end result is going to be? And you can imagine she's going to die or she's not, and you don't know and you can't control it. And I found myself saying, just walk it back and connect all the dots. How you got here, it's very obvious how you got here. So was it right to marry Dave? Yes, I was so excited about that. Was it right to start this mission in Burma? Yes, it was tailor-made for us and him. And was it right to bring your kids here? Yes, we wanted to live life as a family. We didn't want to be separate in different places. Was it right to be here right now? Yes. Okay. So here you are. But all the dots line up. No regrets on any of those dots. And now it's back in my hands again. And so I always remember that when I get to this, and she did recover. Thank God for that. She did recover. But it was such a good point that I've been in a couple different situations. It's like, walk it back and connect all the dots. Where have you been to see this is not an accident, and this actually is in my plan, and I have had control all along. Jesus is saying, I've been in this all along. This moment is no different, even though you don't know the future. I think still kind of in that category of freedom, I asked Haley, or what was it about my mothering? It's sort of like, I'm going to give a talk about mothering, but I don't know what to say because you're the child. You're the one that should give the talk. My child should say what was the best. And she said in a couple different things, freedom, that I gave her the freedom to try new things. I gave her the freedom to have different friends and go different places and just try things. And so I don't know if that's, again, because it was the ingredients in our family pot that was like that, but she was thankful. And I know that God is using those teaching moments along the way that are difficult, as well as the prayer. You know, if you look at the video, if you look at some of the things that we do, you might say, that's work hard, play hard kind of life. And I really felt it was more of a live hard, pray hard kind of life is what we've been given and what we are really thankful for. And so Dave's commitment to prayer about everything has been a model for the family. Every time he moves and does one thing or the other, he's always praying and inviting other people to pray with him. And it really is, when I said we're all doing this parenting together, it is so much of that because we are, among our even group here, have been helping with my kids, helping with each of your kids. It's our team in Burma that has been helping raise my kids, keeping them safe and keeping them occupied. Our team in Chiang Mai, our family, Dave's parents here, my family in America, and our mission family in America that have poured into kids in so many ways. And then now as they're off in university, I see things God's putting in their life that I could have never predicted, relationships and opportunities. And so it's just that thankfulness to God for his moving and weaving in their life in ways that I never knew, and helping me be faithful and my best self as much as possible. And just in a posture of indebtedness and gratefulness constantly. And I think lastly, a verse that's always stayed with me. And to be perfectly honest, it's a bit of a captioning of the verse. And it's in Matthew 28, and it says, "Do not be afraid of that which kills the body, but that which kills the soul." And somehow that really, as far as parenting, has been a mantle, I don't know what you would call it, that says we need to put as much eternal stuff in them as possible. Focus on the eternal. You don't know your last day. You don't know their last day. Make them fit for heaven. That means ready and familiar with heaven and the things that are eternal. And the body is secondary. So that's easier said than done, and it works different ways. And of course, that passage in Matthew is about the end times, and it's difficult. So it's a bit of pulling that concept out. But I really have felt strengthened by the fact that we do focus on the soul. We do give God the ability to make them who he wants them to be. I felt God say, I'm the principal in this relationship. I know their future. You just put the books in front of them and get them to do the tasks. I know beyond your life even what I have for their future. And introduce them to me and I will give them abundant life. And so thank you for all those who have poured in and continue to pour in and support me and our family as well as our kids. And so I think that's what I have. And I just thank God for this. And we can have a time of questions or sharing together. I wanted us to be able to share resources. And as I said, there's a prayer booklet that absolutely I love for the last 15 years I've used. And I feel like we do have resources we need to share with each other. Every once in a while I do that. I'll say, what are you reading today? What's your devotional today? What's your devotional this month? What's been the best thing you've read this year? Because we don't survive on our own. And it's not rocket science when to find you can read the Bible, but we need more. We need something else sometimes. And we don't always know it unless we share with each other. So that would be the next minute or two, would be to write down a couple different resources they would use, and hopefully we can share these with each other at the right time. So why don't I pray? We can close with prayer, and then we can go on to the next thing. Vicki, you can be thinking of if we want to do questions or something. But all right. Lord Jesus, thank you so much for the opportunity to come together, to seek you in all aspects of our life. And this morning about how to raise our kids overseas, how to bring them up as best as we can in your eyes, with situations that we are out of control in, situations that we feel strong, opportunities that come out of our own personalities, our own joy, things we want to give to our kids that we feel is the best we have to give them, and then the world's influence that is sometimes good and sometimes not. And we need your help to navigate all of those avenues and paths. We need each other. And so help us to know how best to support each other and how best to keep connected to you first and in our marriage, and then as we raise our kids. And we give them to you. Put all of our kids in your hands. In Jesus' name, amen.